back to the Augustana Observer Podcast. I'm your host, Jaren Smith. Today I sat with the Director of Student Wellbeing and Resiliency, Farrah Roberts, to discuss Augustana's National Alliance on Mental Illness, otherwise known as NAMI, to discuss the upcoming Hear Me Out event later this month. I wanted to thank you all for tuning into this week's episode, and I hope you all enjoy. Welcome back to the Augustana Observer Podcast. I'm your host, Jaren Smith, and I'd like to give my guests a chance to introduce themselves.
Thank you for having me. I'm Farrah Roberts. I'm the Director of Student Wellbeing and Resiliency.
How long have you been the Director of Student Wellbeing and Resiliency?
This is my 4th year here at Augustana.
So how would you say that being the director has kind of changed from when you first started to say now?
So my position was brand new when I started. I was the first person to hold this position, so it kind of developed over time from a very square one type basis. We weren't sure what it was going to mean other than supporting students in a variety of ways, one of them being mental health education. And then also we had kind of buckets that we called them of what I was going to focus on. So mental health education, healthy relationships, and sexual violence prevention was going to be in my domain. And then also alcohol and drug abuse on campus. And really, all of this was supposed to be more on the preventative side of things, but also on a case-by-case basis, working with students that were in the midst of something or handling the aftermath of something.
I understand. And it's good to hear kind of stuff like that. It's like a resource for Augustana students, and that's a great transition into talking more about NAMIs. Do you mind telling me a little bit more about it?
Sure. So the student Augie NAMI group was in place when I started, but they have, like all student groups, have turnover, and some years they're very strong and other years they're kind of starting over. And so when I first started, they had a very strong group that were all seniors transitioning out. So we needed to really make sure that stayed consistent in the coming years. And their focus at that time, because it is their group, along with mental health awareness and support, and really that peer support, which, I love for students to come talk to me, but I also know that it's better sometimes for students to be able to relate with one another and talk to each other. So really they were very focused on the peer support element of that particular year. They were very focused on eating disorders and making sure that students had that awareness. Each year it shifts and changes a little bit with whoever the president is. So that's really where they were at that first year that I began. And they are supported by our local NAMI organization, not necessarily in any specific way other than if they need resources in the community, local NAMI will assist us or support us. This year, local NAMI actually gave us a small grant to be able to build some stress kits and things like that for students, and to also help out with this year's end of year Hear Me Out event. So that was really nice.
That's awesome. So kind of throughout, say, the school year, is there other, say, events that NAMI kind of puts together? Or just kind of just the main big one that students kind of look forward to by the end of the year?
So they have a peer support meeting every Monday night that they change the topic on. Sometimes one of the members will have a passion project or a certain disorder they want to focus on, or maybe it's a self-care night, or they try to kind of theme them throughout the year. And they've stayed really consistent with that this year, especially keeping those on Monday nights and being there for students. And then they'll have... they'll participate in other events, maybe with her campus or, OSL, or kind of team up with other areas on campus to do smaller representations throughout the year. But the Hear Me Out event is really their event that they completely, organize and invite speakers and get everything together. And this will be their 2nd year of doing that.
That's awesome. And say by my understanding also, there's going to be I think a guest speaker. There's going to be kind of events and stuff like that, and other things students, faculty will be there for. But can you just kind of talk to me kind of about kind of some of the things that say that like the group kind of like advocates, which I understand it's a kind of a student-led group, but like kind of just like some of the things that you see from your position that kind of NAMI does on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So they're very well educated in suicide prevention and the warning signs and symptoms to look out for amongst their fellow students that way. One of the really cool things, at least from my perspective, that they do is that if someone on staff has a student come in that is just really not connecting here on campus or can't find their friend group or just feels like they're isolated or lonely, they will actually take referrals from me. So I can say, hey, I'll reach out to the president or we have a community liaison on their exec board. I'll say, this student really needs some support. Can you personally invite them to a meeting, or can you come and take them to lunch or something like that? So really just trying to welcome more people into the community. They all have lived experience in some mental health capacity. So whether it's, depression, anxiety, whatever it may be, they've all been there. And so they can really speak to that with other students. So they, can host things in classrooms if faculty request it. They work with me on different, if I'm hosting a suicide prevention training, they help me promote that. We just kind of help cross promote a lot of the things that are going on campus. And then at this event, at the end of the year, they really just try to make it more of a celebration of understanding that, mental health issues know no boundaries, and that we're all in this together. And so they try to have like a meaningful speaker or a panel, but then also do some fun things too.
If you don't mind me asking, if it's not spoiling too much, what kind of fun things to like our potential audience have for, say, April 30th?
So I believe what the plans are to have therapy dogs will be there, which is always fun. Last year I don't even know how many dogs were there, but there was a lot. I mean, you could almost have your own dog to pet. It was fun. And then they do like rock painting, so like messages of hope and things, and then they put them around campus. They'll have a table with a variety of ribbons you can make. They'll have a selfie station. There is a self-care Jenga game that you can participate in. Usually there's a couple other like game type things. And then I don't know if they've decided yet whether or not to have one guest or to have a panel this year, but if they have a panel, it'll be a mix of community resources and campus resources. So
Gotcha.
Give, both options to students to be able to just hear a little bit more about what's out there.
Gotcha. I'd say kind of my next question is that like, does like your title of Director of Student Wellbeing and Resiliency, is there any correlation with your position here with NAMI, or are you kind of like, say, a faculty advisor for the group? Like, can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, so I would be their faculty advisor, exactly. They had a faculty member 4 years ago that was their advisor and just kind of transitioned out, and they invited me to fill in with that role. And because I felt especially equipped to help them, because I have done mental health education for 12 to 15 years. So, and I think it's important if they're in the group for them to get some of the education that better equips them to work with some of the students that might come in and give them information that they don't know how to handle. And then of course I'm just there when those types of situations arise, like, Farrah, we want to support this student, but we think maybe it's over our head, can you help us out? So
I understand, and say, because I feel like, because I'm a junior here, and I feel like, say, within like last year, if like this event coming up, I feel like I heard about it in the past, and so like it was brought up to me a few days ago. I was like, I remember at least hearing about this, but I just think it's good really to have such a system in place for students and people alike to just be able to talk, have that sense of belonging, togetherness. I think that's one of the things that makes Augustana great. But I think it's a great segue into this. What does being a part of NAMI mean to you personally?
So I am someone that is an ally to anyone that is experiencing or has experienced mental health issues or concerns. Just like we use the term ally for a lot of other things, being an ally to people who have gone through their own mental health issue is very important because it can be very isolating. It can also feel like you're, the only one, or you don't know how to maybe bounce back from those types of events. And so I'm very much an ally in that, and I keep myself extremely well educated on all the different things that come out about mental health in the research, and what trainings might be best to help students and staff and faculty. I also make sure that I train staff and faculty whenever I can on, these are the things that if you see this in a student, you should be concerned and reach out for more help, because we never want anybody to slip through the cracks. So just a very strong supporter of all things mental health and normalizing the fact that this is very common. It's very common, especially in the college age group, to have your first episode of depression or anxiety, and maybe it feels like, why is this happening to me now? But this is literally the time frame that a lot of these things happen for the first time. And to know that probably 4 people down from you, someone's having that same issue, or that it is very common, and we want to always break that stigma down, and then definitely promote all the resources that we have on campus, which are many, but also we're lucky in this area that we do have a lot of community resources where some places don't. So, there's never a time where you shouldn't be able to get help, basically. So that's definitely a big message of mine.
Yeah, I understand. And I'd say, like, over time, like, being a junior, I feel like I've learned a lot just about mental health and mental illnesses, exactly. And then, like, I know me, like, I haven't struggled with, say, depression or other related ideas, but something that has definitely helped me get through my time at college is I talk to my family every single day. It's to the point where I'll call my mom multiple times a day. Like, even in high school, I would email my mom saying, like, I'm bored. And she'd ask, like, what class are you sitting in? I'm like, oh, it's 6th period. It's math. Like, I talk to my family every day. I talk to my older brother. I make plans to play games, because I'd say for me, if there's anything that I've noticed, because, like, I feel like I don't find myself stressing out too much. But times where I do feel that way, I'd say probably the best way is for me to, I guess, calm down, decompress would be either to A, watch a little bit of TV or a movie, and then B, I do like to play video games from time to time. So playing games with my older brother, it's always really fun. And I think also it helps my older brother too from the aspect, because I hadn't thought about this much really until this year, that, like, yes, going, like, when you go away to school, it's very hard on the student, but it's also very hard for the family also, because for 4 years of someone's life, for instance of here, we're here, I had to guess with the math, I'd say at least 75% of your 4 years here, which that's a lot of time. But another thing I'd like to ask you is, what would you say is, like, the best way for a student who is struggling with mental health to get in contact with, say, because I remember earlier you mentioned, like, some students prefer talking to their peers. So what's the best way for a student to get in contact with someone if they need to talk?
So if they want to specifically talk to somebody from NAMI, they do have a QR code somewhere on the website that takes you, it's like directly to, like, a little form that just says, it's like a reach out type form. However, if that somehow is just, in the moment, they're not sure how to do that, I am always happy to pass along any type of message by emailing me. I'm very accessible, either by email or phone or stopping into the office. But also just the CAs all have a lot of training in mental health awareness and things to be concerned about, and I share a lot of information with them. So their CAs are a great resource. In Greek life, I work a lot with, like, Greek Council or different members of, the leadership. So that might be a spot to reach out to. If they're an athlete, asking a coach who might be the student on the team that's a little bit more tuned into that type of stuff. There's a lot of training and things that go on behind the scenes that students may not realize how many student leaders are actually trained in different aspects of, caring for each other or how to help a struggling peer and things like that. So you shouldn't have to go too far to find a peer that knows something, about mental health, but also, if you really wanted to be connected to NAMI, you could either find them on their website or you could, reach out to me and I could connect you directly.
Is the website different from like the typical Augustana edu, or is it like you can find it through like the school's website?
Yeah, it's on the school's website. Unfortunately, just how our school's website is. Sometimes there's links that haven't been updated, or there's dead links, or like it might have been the NAMI from 2019 and never got deleted or anything. But I know that when they first started out as this new group, last year, I think it was, this new group that's really taken hold, they had like an interest form that they posted, and they really wanted to know what kind of workshops students wanted, if they needed support, how to reach out. So I think that's something we'll definitely continue and maybe even promote more as time goes on, because I think that's a good point, that it's like, how can we make it easier just to reach out directly,
Yeah, I understand, and like I didn't say I understand like how important it is to reach out, and I know it may be hard for some people. What I think is another great segue into the people who do have a hard time just talking with someone. Like, do you have ways yourself that you try to encourage others to just to maybe even have like small conversations about it until they're comfortable like attacking the subject head on?
Yeah. Well, I try to make myself available, and it's something that I intentionally want to do more of, especially, in the coming years, since we're almost at summer now. Life gets busy, but it's important for me to be visible on campus and talk to groups and just kind of connected to let students know that, like, I'm just a person and I'm not a therapist. They can come in, we can decide if therapy is even what they want to do, or if they just want to get more information, or if they just want to vent about something that's going on. So I have a lot of really informal conversations with students, or I'll get emails that say like, I don't know if you're the person I should talk to, but I just don't like the way things are going, or things like that. And I'm like, oh, let's talk about it, So I'm extremely easy to talk to, and there's nothing anyone can ever say to me that will shock me or, stun me or anything, believe me. So I think every student comes from a different place, whether it's culturally, maybe mental health was never discussed in their culture, or maybe their families don't really support anything along those lines, and or they're just like, I've always been this happy person that, could handle everything, and all of a sudden I feel I'm falling apart. Like, there's all sorts of different circumstances, but I think like knowing that I'm a resource, that I don't have to make you go anywhere. I'm not gonna, it is confidential what you share with me, as long as it's not like a harm to self or others type situation, and that's just a requirement that we have to report. But I think really what my goal will be moving forward is just to be as visible as possible, so that people know that there is somebody that's, not that they're jumping right into therapy by coming to talk to me, because they're not. And it could just be like, hey, let's work through this weird social problem, or, and, I give solutions. I'm not going to give you homework or anything like that.
I was happy not giving homework, because if anything, I feel like maybe not so much freshman year, at least regarding that. I feel like myself, I didn't have as much homework. Maybe that's just because I'm the high school class of 2020, so my first year here was the COVID year. But now I feel like we have a pretty normal college experience, and now I can see like, college is tough in terms of the homework load. But I'd say just hearing no extra homework is involved, that makes me feel better.
We'll come up with a plan together. Sometimes I'll meet with students for like 2-3 weeks in a row just to kind of work through whatever it is, and it could be anything from like a breakup to a bad roommate situation to like something happened at home to just, just somebody to bounce ideas off of that has, more life experience, fortunately, than them. I'm a mom too, so, I can understand all the family dynamics and everything that goes along with that kind of stuff. But also, I'm very supportive. I can push back a little bit and challenge too, because I want students to grow and to know that sometimes you have to kind of sit in your discomfort or feel your discomfort and work through it, but that's how we become strong. But you don't have to do it alone. And there's so many resources on campus, and I work with so many different resources. So I always say, if it's not me, I know who you should go to.
I understand.
And, I'll refer you to them. If you still want to talk to me, that's fine too. But yeah, it's just a matter of, I'm here. I'm gonna give you some solutions and some answers and things like that. But I'm not the end all be all. I don't know it all, and I'm just there to listen.
I understand, and I feel like just listening, I think that's a crucial thing, because like even me, whenever I have say my bad days, just someone to just listen, even if it's one thing, maybe if I messed up making dinner last night and I got upset by that, and if say I called my brother, even just him listening, I think that makes a tremendous difference in my world and people who have a similar circumstance. I'd say really one of my last questions for you is, would you say there's any, I'll say, misunderstandings or misconceptions with NAMI at this school for maybe students don't quite seem to understand?
I think it's something that we have to regularly remind students what it is, that it's certainly somewhere that you can come if you're, very interested in mental health and that's, your passion and things like that. But it's also in their meetings, they have a time to just share experiences. They also always have an activity. Sometimes it's like adult coloring book or learning how to journal or learning how to do a 5-minute mindfulness activity. Or so they try to incorporate something that is good for all students. It doesn't, like, you don't have to be going there with a mental health crisis to go to the meeting. It's supposed to be a space for students that they feel comfortable and safe. They can, I'm not there. It's students that are there. So they, keep things in the room. It's supposed to be if it's happens at NAMI, it stays at NAMI type thing. Again, always with the exception if there's something that a student, talks about harming themselves or something, I encourage them to always report that, because that's just something we, never want to have happen. But it's just a safe space, and they do fun stuff. So it's not like you're going to go there and you're just going to talk about depression for an hour or whatever. But it's also a place where a lot of friendships are born, and that there's just continued support. So I know they're choosing their exec board for next year right now, because many of them are graduating, and again, it puts us in a hard situation. But the overall message is just peers supporting peers around. Could be anything from a stressful day of class to a full-on breakdown, like that's, and anything in between. So I think there's people that are on athletic teams, there's people that are in Greek life, there's all aspects represented that come to those meetings. So it's definitely, just like mental illness concerns don't discriminate against anybody, this group is very open and wants to be as diverse and look as much like our campus as possible. So
I understand, and I'm glad to hear that. And like, I hope for the future, not even just for the rest of this school year, but for next school year, 5 years down the line, future, however long it may be, that students continue to have this amazing resource to be able to utilize it to the fullest, and also have the positions at the school, whether it be such as yourself or another teacher that students might feel comfortable talking to. Well, I'd say really, other than just any other things that you'd like to add, do you mind just talking a little bit more about like the event itself, maybe some things that you're looking forward to, or maybe like other things that maybe maybe another student might be looking forward to at NAMI?
Sure. So I'm excited because this is their second year, and the first year they were definitely the first time they had ever really planned a big event of this size. And now I know they feel much more confident in everything that they're doing, and they have, they know what worked last year and what didn't. They know what food to get. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some pretty yummy food there, which is always great.
College students love their food.
Yes, we will get you food. I think that I've personally invited a lot more members of the community to come this year and be represented, so I think that's exciting. So it'll definitely be like a resource fair. So if a student doesn't walk away knowing where they can go after this, then, I would like to know about that, because I think that they will. But also, it should just be fun. It should be fun. There's just going to be some fun hands-on activities. I think there's going to be some giveaways. And then it's kicking off Mental Health Awareness Month, which is May. So that's why they have it when they do. This is the kickoff. And then after the first 2 weeks of May, myself and the OSL and some different groups on campus are going to try to do 2 or 3 small things, each week to just kind of keep mental health in the front of everybody's mind. And I do think that they're going to have some like self-care kits and things like that to give out. So it'll just be fun. It'll be lighthearted. There'll be good food. You can pet some therapy dogs. You could make some like hands-on crafts. And I think hopefully it'll be a good event. And it's in Yevla this year. Last year it was in Lindbergh. So being in the Gerber Center, I think, is a good location. And you guys are going to be there anyway for lunch. So just come on down.
I was going to say, I think it's great. And I didn't even think about the angle of May being like National Mental Health Awareness Month. So I think April 30th is quite literally the perfect time to have it. And also along the lines that finals aren't that much long, like what, about 3 weeks after, kind of. So I think it's quite literally the perfect time. But I don't have any other questions to ask you. I don't know if you have any other things you'd like to add, but really I just want to thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate it. This is fun. Anytime I can just kind of get the message out about what I do, what NAMI does, and what we can do together. And then I'm always open to student suggestions, and I'm always kind of recruiting for my NAMI exec board. So not that they need my help, because I'm sure they're doing a great job, but I just really want this to be a group that stays strong and is a support for students moving forward. But yes, and I'm always here if groups or classes or student organizations want any more information or short workshops or anything like that on any of the areas I mentioned before: mental health, sexual violence, healthy relationships, alcohol and drugs, any of those things. I try to make them entertaining and interactive. So if that's ever anything that speaks to a student organization, just reach out and I'll put something together.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time. And to all our listeners back home, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your week. Thank you for tuning into this week's edition of the Augustana Observer Podcast. I'm your host, Jaren Smith, and I'll see you next time. I wanted to thank you all for tuning into this week's edition of the Augustana Observer Podcast. I'm your host, Jaren Smith, and I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode, and I'll see you next time.